Here we go, everyone. Quality time starts now.
This is Steve Downs, the voice of Master Chief, Spartan 117. Welcome to Quality Time, the KO Koala Entertainment Podcast. Anthony and Skylar will take it from here. Master Chief, out.
Hello, and welcome to Quality Time, the KO Koala Entertainment Podcast. I'm Skylar Sokol.
I'm Anthony Nicolosi.
Yeah, and we're here today to talk about some feedback on our last podcast about art styles. And then we're going to move into something else. So that's something else, just so that you don't leave before you hear it, is we're going to talk about FPS game design.
Bang! First-person shooters, the spanking of recent generations, just spanking all the other genres in regards to financial success, in regards to happiness, ratings, everywhere.
Anthony's very ready for this topic. All right, so let's hear some feedback, though, about art styles first. What do you got for us?
Yeah, for those who were not around last time, we talked about art styles. We talked about the different kinds of art styles. Generally, we broke it down into realistic versus stylized art styles, the pros and cons of the two, which increase game longevity. This past week, we put out a piece of content talking about how the Sea of Thieves art director, Ryan Stevenson, and his team deliberately chose to go for a stylized art style to increase game longevity, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, we asked you guys, referencing that piece of content, another one, what you guys preferred, what you guys liked more in regards to what art styles and things involving that. And we'll start with a post on Instagram where we asked real versus stylized, which do you prefer? And I'll say, I was reviewing it earlier, the majority is stylized. People preferred stylized. Why? It's kind of a combination. I would say I'll kind of glance through it here a little bit, but last time we talked about how the stylized art styles many times create a clearer visualization for gameplay elements, right? Like the colors stand out more in a lot of ways, and gameplay systems can kind of benefit from them, I guess. And a few people called that out. Squid.max, in fact, did, and my finger just swiped. But one game, right, Skylar, that definitely is benefiting from it right now, that has just recently gone live, Valorant.
Yeah, and we talked about that last week. Check out that podcast for our opinions on that art style. But yeah, it's the stylized graphics are definitely taking it somewhere. I mean, I think they have an appeal to a market that Riot is looking for, and they also provide a lot of game visibility, as you were saying.
As I'm scrolling through the feedback, I'm landing on SM Dickinson, who says, I prefer stylized because it allows more creative freedom for special designs, because there shouldn't be any natural restrictions in games.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Games transport you to a different world, right? And if you got to make it all realistic, then you can't have a giant Cthulhu tentacle monster if you got to have a scruffy bearded man in the corner or whatever.
Yeah, in Halo 4 they changed shoulder pieces so that it was more realistic. So like your Spartan should actually in real life be able to move with those shoulder pieces. Generally, I think the community looked down upon that change, but it's just to touch on, right? Like they were restricted in that case. Official Guac, I mean, Borderlands is one of my favorite game series for the cell shading. I'd call that stylized.
Yep.
We had a few people here just now on chat, Turtle Fist, calling out Borderlands. But he said he also likes Call of Duty for its realistic style. It just depends on the game for him.
That's fair. I mean, and that's true, right? Like, graphics are important, right? They're cool. They add a lot to a game. They definitely affect a first impression of the game. But when it comes down to it, it's the gameplay that matters, right?
And Dante B6 on Instagram says just that. I don't think one is better than the other. It just depends on the game. Like Rocket League wouldn't look more fun if it were more realistic. in his
Yeah,
opinion.
and I mean, I think Rocket League is pretty realistic looking already. Like, I think of games like Cell Damage, which was like one of my favorite GameCube games, and it's like super cell shaded. You're in cars driving around. That's why I am comparing it. But yeah, it's like really cell shaded with like cartoon characters driving the cars and shit. So compared to that, like Rocket League is very realistic. But as we talked about last time, it does a really good integration of realism with stylized, with the goofy decals and all of that. But also, you know, the cars look very realistic in the backgrounds.
Yeah, and he calls out. He finishes his thought by saying, in his opinion, Doom wouldn't be as fun if it was more like cartoony. In his opinion, so
interesting.
Cool.
That's an interesting statement, actually. How do you feel about that? Like, have you played cartoony style shooty games like that? I mean, Valorant's an example, right? It's cartoony styled, and I don't think it would be more fun if it weren't.
Like if it was realistic,
right? But then again, I think of games like Apex Legends and Warzone and stuff like that. And those games I think maybe less fun if they didn't look like that. It's just, I think, the intention of the game, right? Maybe?
Yeah. Like for me personally, I think something would definitely be lost if Doom went animate, like cartoony, just because it's Doom. But generally speaking, another one, maybe it would work. So Ripskits Gaming, with a actually pretty great breakdown. He says stylized and realized and realistic. He likes both. Games like Shadow of the Tomb Raider work really well for being real, whereas games like Borderlands hit hard with the amazing comic boom like cell shaded artwork.
It's true. So the nostalgia factor of like comic book style graphics is a really interesting thing, right? Because a lot of people like that cartoon comic booky style. Cuphead, Borderlands, cell shaded graphics in general do a really good job of that.
Right. And because he mentioned Tomb Raider, I asked him, would you say the realistic graphics and lighting enhance Tomb Raider like environmental puzzles, right? Because that's a thing in that game. He said, put simply, yes. He also says, just generally speaking, as long as either the realistic or stylized art style is implemented in a way that complements the gameplay, he enjoys it. He goes on to say, for example, Tomb Raider being a difficult game with a lot of realism in gameplay, such as how one arrow doesn't kill a tiger, or a good game that's well implemented like Minecraft being a simple game with a simple art style. So those were a couple of examples, like he's saying,
It's sort of like what I was talking about last time, where the design and the graphics are sort of tied together, and the graphics inform the design and the design informs the graphics, so that they like mesh really well and the like intention is clear. Gaming Thief Official tells us that he thinks that Doom couldn't be cartoony because Doom has this feeling to it that shouldn't have like cartoon graphics. It just wouldn't make sense with the like style of the game. And I think that's right? They would have to have a much more goofy tone to the game if they were going to have cartoony graphics. And they don't really go for a goofy tone. They sort of go for an over-the-top power trip kind of tone. He also mentions the game called Firewatch, which is a really cool walking simulator-esque game that there's a turtle in it, I think. And it's got very like stylized graphics, similar to Sea of Thieves sort of, and it works great for that game. I think one thing you can create that are really memorable with stylized graphics are really beautiful environments. Like The Witness, one of my favorite games of all time, has really stylized graphics that make it so beautiful. The environments, I think, even more beautiful than like what realistic would be. I mean, I think real environments are amazing. Like the outdoors is amazing, but I think there's something to it, like, like impressionist paintings almost, right? Taking the realistic environment and sort of reimagining it in a different way is a really cool thing.
Yep, absolutely. Gaming Thief Official, that comment that Skylar just called out was live from chat. So if you're listening to this not live, you could be cool too, like Gaming Thief
every
Official.
Monday at 8:30 EST on Twitch.
8:30 p.m.
TV/KOKoala_ENT.
Bang. Sand Squid in Twitch chat calls out Cuphead with the 1930s style is amazing. Oh, yes, Sand Squid. I mean, I knew going into that game I didn't want to play a platformer, but I played it. I bought it, and I played the little bit I played just because of the art.
Yeah, no,
like,
I mean, that'll be
good.
some of the most memorable graphics of all time in a game, I think. Cuphead will, that game will always look amazing. And just the fact that it was like a very small team, like it's like 2 dudes or some shit, It's crazy.
It started out right.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, I think it was one of the guy's wife who was responsible for the animation and the drawing, if I remember correctly.
Interesting.
Before Microsoft came on board and gave him a team to help him. But anyway, well deserved, super cool game. I want to read one more.
Yeah,
for this piece
let's
of
get
content.
one more piece of feedback and then let's move on.
I think I'm pronouncing this right. Mealyflower. Mealyflower says, for me, it depends on the game the developer's trying to go for, like how older graphics with a grainy filter can make a game eerie for horror, or realistic sceneries can make an open world game more alive. It all comes down to what setting will best fit the intentions of the creator of the game for me.
Yeah.
So I replied and I said, well said. What game stands out in that regard as having a really impactful art style? And Mealyflower says, I think a game that stuck with me was That Dragon Cancer. Did you play that game?
Oh, no, I've heard of it, but I am not
Me too.
familiar enough
it
with
myself.
it to talk about it, actually, but that game is crazy.
Mealyflower says, it wasn't realistically styled, but was stylized in a way that no character had a face and was almost semi-cubist with mild realism mixed in. The
Interesting.
over details weren't needed to tell a story about a young child battling cancer, and the different dream sequences and narrative is what really sold it for me, they said. Also shows that a game doesn't need to be packed with adventure and the latest graphic software to leave an impact. Definitely not.
I mean, I'm a big fan of games like that. What Remains of Edith Finch is one of my favorite games, also a game that covers topics like around death, sort of, and it's really, really amazing.
You know, one game that I actually bought on Steam. I'm going to play it once things settle down. Grease, right?
Yes.
And I said that right? Grease.
I don't know.
Grease. But the art
GIF
style
or
and
GIF.
that art style and color palettes that they chose and everything was very super intentional in them communicating I think that game centers around anxiety, if I remember correctly, or depression.
Mm-hmm.
So another cool one if you're listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rollick in the chat also said, relating to that grainy horror feel, Outlast is a horror game where you have a camera and you use that camera to you can see different things in the camera, and when you switch, so the graphic style is very realistic, but then when you go into the camera, it has like a darker view and it's got a lot of graininess, and so at one point I think your camera even cracks, so then you have a crack on the screen when you look in the camera, and that makes adds such an intense immersive environment to the game. When you're looking at that camera, it is so tense because you think some crazy shit is gonna happen for sure.
Cool. I have not played it myself, but
shall we move on to our FPS topic? Or
I just want to call out a few more things on a second post, and then we're good. Okay, because we asked, we gave, as I mentioned before, we put out a piece of content around Ryan Stevenson's the art director from Rare, and his he gave a GDC talk in 2018. That on YouTube we will link in the description, surrounding how they developed and implemented the art style for Sea of Thieves. And generally the question that we posed in the content was, does a stylized art style increase game longevity? And to be or not to be, Toby, a regular here on the show, and
Turtle
Mr.
Fist Pump.
He calls out, I'm going to use Wind Waker as an example. Game still looks great to this day versus playing the original Twilight Princess, which looks really dated.
Yep. Twilight Princess went for a more realistic art style. Wind Waker went for the super stylized art style. Totally makes sense.
Yep. And Tucker Kraus calling out, yes, cartoony Mario games age much better than realistic shooters. I think we actually used those two. I think in the previous episode we talked about the Super Mario Brothers against a Call of Duty or something, and how those aged. Now I want to call out Asapasapinilian. You got to clean that up, man. That was hard. Says absolutely not. Stylized games do not increase longevity. The thing that increases game longevity is fun gameplay and rewards for playing said game, whether it be through unlocks, events, etc.
Dang. The call out.
And I said, great perspective, but if let's say the gameplay is great, right? Do you think realistic or stylized art styles ages better? And Not James replied saying, I certainly like better graphics, but only when they try to attain a certain style. Destiny 1 and Halo both tried for realistic graphics, but have totally different styles that contributed to the games. So that was also kind of touching on something we talked about last episode of how, like, especially these sci-fi games that go for realistic art styles have, I think, a little bit of an advantage in that they introduce more visual elements that you just have no reference or expectation for, and thus could age better than a just strictly realistic looking game.
Yeah, Rollick makes a good point in the chat that some of these AAA publishers that release like a new Call of Duty every year probably don't really care that much about game longevity, and thus they can go for these realistic styles because, like, if the game looks bad in a year, it doesn't matter because a new one's coming out.
Specifically with the Call of Duty franchise, like he calls that's especially true, which they have annual releases.
Yep.
So
that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but that is definitely a really good point.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for your feedback. That was great. Interact in our content and you could get a shout out. Yeah, it's quality time. And right now, Skylar, I think we've wrapped up some feedback and we are gonna roll into something.
Yeah, I think we're gonna do like a half episode on FPS design, and then we'll finish it out next week.
Yeah, quite frankly, I could talk.
I know you can.
Weeks on FPS. I love them.
All right, so the topic of FPS design. Where do you want to start? I think what I want to start with is let's talk about. I guess just like why are FPSs fun?
Okay. Yeah.
Why are FPSs fun?
So this is interesting because up till Halo 1, I actually did not think FPSs were very fun. The FPS I had the most fun playing up till then, like, granted, Halo kind of ushered in a new wave of FPSs, at least on console, but was GoldenEye. And GoldenEye was like, okay, to me, like, it was fun. It was kind of fun if you had the golden gun. Outside of that, I didn't really think it was fun.
Fair. You didn't like throwing Oddjob's hat and one-shotting people with it?
I'm not sure if I even knew I could do that.
Oh, yeah. The short, OP, tiny hitbox character could throw his hat and kill people in one hit. It was stupid.
Yeah, I just played at my friend's house when we would have, like, sleepovers and stuff. But I think a big reason why, for example, Halo and then subsequently subsequent shooters, especially on console where I played most of my shooters, that's actually a whole other thing here. But on controller started becoming fun was because the controls started feeling good. And it enabled you they weren't a barrier to the rest of the experience. So I think that's one.
So what about these experiences is fun for you then, though? Like, yeah, you said Halo started it for you, but why is it fun? Why would you rather play an FPS than a platformer, for example? Because I know you're not a big platforming game fan.
Yeah, so I don't know if platforming is the best example. There's a lot of, because there's so many reasons why differences. Maybe something closer to something else that I used to like, which was, or play much more of, which was like a single player action RPG game. Like a third person. Yeah.
Well, okay. But so let's get a little broader first, though, because like that's a very specific comparison, right? Like third person versus first person, of course it'll change it, but I want to talk about like why FPS genre even exists. Why do shooter games even exist, even, right? Like,
yeah. Because you asked me why I preferred it over another genre.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons. At a high level, I enjoy the responsiveness of like how it feels to play those games, the toy aspect, if you will, of those games. I like in the shooters that I play, there's always generally some amount of like a power fantasy involved. And I definitely enjoy that. And this is kind of but at least for me, I feel like I have a lot more control over. Maybe it's because I'm like better at shooters than I am, for example, at platformers. but like I can exercise a lot more autonomy on the world that I'm playing.
I think that toy aspect is a huge thing, right? I think we mentioned this in previous podcasts, but a big thing video games do is give you the opportunity to do something you don't normally get to do in real life, and something a lot of people don't do in real life is shoot like guns, right? Like in general, like you can, like obviously, and there's like paintball and shit to replicate this, but like it's so easy to hop onto an FPS and be able to have that experience without having to do it in real life at all. For me, like obviously, the reason I like FPSs is the twitchy reaction based stuff is the big thing. I really like the reaction based gameplay and stuff that challenges me to have fast reactions and good like pinpoint aim. There's also getting into like Valorant and some shooters like that. I really like the tactical aspect of team based games. I think there's like two genres of FPSs I really like. One is story-based ones like BioShock and BioShock Infinite. Like I play those for the story. The gameplay is fun, but honestly, BioShock didn't have to be an FPS for me to love it, right? It could have been whatever. It's much more the story that drove me through it, even though the gameplay is really good. But for like Valorant and games like that, it's the tactical aspect of it that I really love. The team play and the like macro strategy I find really interesting.
Now I want to ask you a question. I know we've already talked extensively about Valorant, so this is a little broader, just in regards to like class-based shooters design, because you called out tactical. Now I wonder too, though, especially for you, is the fact that do you think you would like playing Valorant as much as you do if you didn't often play it with friends?
I actually
you really play with friends, right?
I frequently play it solo actually as well.
Okay.
It's definitely worse solo, but I've actually, and this is a thing for me generally. There aren't that many games I enjoy playing alone. Rocket League is one of the few, and Valorant has actually managed to accomplish that as well. Maybe it's because there's in-game voice chat, even though it's usually toxic like 13-year-olds. But I don't know. I've actually enjoyed playing it alone. So because the team play still exists, Valorant like Counter-Strike is a game that forces team play. Like if you don't have team play, you just lose. It just doesn't work. So because of that, I think the design of the game gives me that ability to want to play it solo sometimes, even though sometimes I have terrible experiences.
Sure. No, just because I feel like in recent years, like Halo's an arena shooter, and it's my favorite kind of shooter, and whatever. There aren't many arena shooters that are prevalent in like modern day.
Arena shooters have absolutely fallen out of popularity.
Yeah, they're almost all class based to some extent. So I have I just out of many reasons as to why people enjoy those class-based games. One thing that I think applies here is self-determination theory, the psychological framework that says that breaks down people's happiness, psychological well-being into being focused on three things: autonomy, people's feeling of autonomy, people's feeling of competence, and relatedness. And I think I feel like these class-based shooters, you actually just said they force some of them like force being in a team and participating with team. But I think that's definitely one thing that just the design focuses on better than an arena shooter. Like, I would say that some of the most enjoyable Halo, especially like in a competitive 4v4 experience, is when you're playing with a friend and playing with teammates and you have communication going on. And Halo has other design elements that make that necessary as well, like shields and everything, and team shots and rotations. But the other games, like literally, it's part of the reason why I don't like playing them. But like if I want to play Overwatch and I am Reaper, like I can't win the game by myself, like I need my teammates to some extent to do their roles for me to
And this
play.
is exactly why I like these games, right? They force this macro strategy that doesn't exist necessarily in a lot of arena shooters, or at least what does exist is much smaller than there's less of it, even though it does exist.
They force this kind of like, the need to relate.
It's like Dota almost, right? Like even Dota, it comes from my love of Dota, right? These macro strategy, large like 5v5 team sort of games. I think what you mentioned is really interesting though, and I think the constraint of class-based shooters really appeals to people. Like Blizzard and these companies, Riot, have developed lore behind each individual character, so it's really easy to feel this relatedness and this like you just get this connection to the character you're playing really easily because they exist and they have voice lines and they talk to the other characters and they like have banter based on what's happening in the game. So you get like free immersion because you already know like the lore of this character. You know who this character is. You don't have to just like be a faceless like Spartan soldier, right, or whatever. You have like this like lore behind you, giving you something to be immersed in.
Another thing that I don't think of when I play shooters, but that is a consideration in regards to the class element, that I was thinking because my wife plays Halo with me all the time, but she a thing that class-based shooters also do in regards to the constraint is there's in a sense your focus is more well defined, right? Like if you are the healer support role, kind of what you should be worried about is a little bit better defined. As to in Halo, like you kind of need to be worried about everything all the time, if that makes sense, in regards to your role, and that kind of dynamically adapts. And it's not a thing for me, but I know that like for people like my wife, people who play more casually, they appreciate that. Like it's easier. Like
it's definitely easier for a casual player to jump in because it's like, oh, this is the stuff my character does. I just do that, and that's sweet, and I can do these things. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think especially with Overwatch, that's a really good example of why people love so many casual FPS players who probably didn't even. A lot of people who didn't even play FPSs got into Overwatch because of the lore and the universe and just the accessibility.
Yep.
And props to Blizzard for making some of like the best lore cinematics of any game that's ever been released. So
yeah,
I don't know if you've watched any of the like Overwatch character. Yeah, they're like amazing. Not only is like the animation amazing, but the like story and the writing is really good.
Yeah, it's like it looks like Pixar stuff.
Right, it literally does. Right, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, that's class-based shooters are a really interesting genre for sure.
Now I'm going to ask you, what about? So in Halo, there's no, okay, not no. But virtually no recoil when firing your gun. And hip fire is a thing. Like you have hip fire is as accurate as when you're zoomed in, and you have no restriction while moving when you're zoomed in. Contrary to like aim down sights mechanics. What are your feelings on? Do you like aiming down sights? Do you like that mechanic? That restricts movement.
Just aiming down sights specific. I was going to talk about just shooting mechanics in general, but I will get.
You can go wherever.
So Call of Duty also has very little recoil. Warzone has basically none, and hipfire is very bad though. You basically only aim down sights in Warzone. Like exclusively, you want to shoot aiming down sights because the guns don't even really work in hipfire. Even from close range. So, and for like when I want to be like casual, I guess I like aiming down sights. I think it's satisfying, especially in a game that has long distances like Warzone. It's really fun to be able to aim down sights, especially when your gun has no recoil. So all you have to do is track the person and you get a kill. So when I want to play casually, I like games with very little shooting recoil. Like I think that's very satisfying. But when it comes to like me wanting to have like Twitch kind of competitive, like that kind of competition, twitchy like reflex-based competition, recoil is really important to me. I think it's like a really important mechanic. Valorant has some of my favorite shooting mechanics I've ever had in a game. Like hipfire is really good in Valorant. Like you don't need to ever aim down sights if you don't want to. Guns are just as accurate and actually have higher fire rate when you're hip firing. But then when you aim down sights, they have reduced recoil and slightly lowered fire rate. But in Valorant, you can't move and shoot at all. You can walk and shoot, but it's less accurate than standing still. So basically in Valorant, you want to stand still when you shoot. I think that's a really cool mechanic because, like, you know, the time to kill in Valorant is extremely low. It's like Counter-Strike, right? It's one-tap headshots with multiple guns. So, like, you are dead in, like, less than a second, always. And so for that, these, like, standstill sort of gunfights are really interesting because it really brings out the tactical aspect of the gameplay. So when you want like this tactical game, recoil and these like moving mechanics and the aim down sights being really different from hipfire are really important because they give you a bunch of options for how to create like this tactical experience. But for like an arena shooter or Call of Duty, I like the shooting to be way more casual feeling, right? To have way less of that, so you can just focus on like the different guns or like what you're and like how you're shooting and your positioning, right? Because like Halo and Warzone have a lot more movement than Valorant too.
Yeah, I mean it's maybe like the single biggest reason why I don't really enjoy Call of Duty, the shooting mechanics, is because I love, one of the things I love most in regards to that toy feeling that we were talking about before with Halo is the sensation of the movement while you shoot. So like literally how it feels to like joust back and forth and be moving around on the joysticks. I've actually been playing on PC and it's still fun that way too. Like it's just the movement while shooting. You know, Halo Doom had this in the beta I played, but you were talking time to kill. Halo's time to kill is super high.
Right.
Like you need to have 5 headshots to like kill somebody.
Right.
With
so it wouldn't be fun at
weapon.
all then, right? If you like couldn't move and shoot, if you just had to stand there shooting at each other, it wouldn't be fun at all, right? Like, so it totally makes sense that that's how it's designed.
I don't know like what that map would even look like
right.
too. Yeah. So I love the sensation of shooting while moving, and it's a thing that generally deters me from when I play other shooters. And like it's a big switch from a long time to kill to I feel like the shorter time to kills in any of these games just put more of an emphasis on tactical positioning, right?
100%,
like,
yes.
So
Rainbow Six Siege, Valorant, all these games are like the macro strategy, like I said, matters so much more, and that's the thing that appeals to me and to people who play those games, right? Overwatch, for example, has a longer time to kill for sure, and it's also similar. You can move and shoot and all of that, and it doesn't matter. I think I really like moving and shooting. I think it's super fun. Like what you're describing, I think is absolutely fun. The toy of that is really fun, and in like single player FPS games I play, like BioShock and games like that, moving and shooting is super fun, and I do it all the time, right? Like I think it's very different. Like the experiences are super different experiences, right? The moving and shooting experience, and then the like. I need to have my one reaction. This one moment has to be precisely correct, or I lose. Right? It's just a very different experience.
The tactical positioning, like I can respect it, and like it's even fun to watch. You know, like I like watching CS matches, like competitive CS matches. But I just maybe it's because also that's in a sense there's a little more of a learning curve to really jump into a game like that and be like, if you don't know the map, right, like in a game like that with quick
map
time
knowledge
to kill
is extremely important in these tactical games.
Well, especially I'm thinking like in Rainbow Six.
Oh my god!
Especially like, you know, with all of the
you'll just get killed through like a hole in the wall that you didn't even know existed. Yep.
Or fucking like TV game. Are there guns that shoot through walls?
Oh yeah.
Like,
well,
not
like you can
not
wall
the
bang.
destructible walls.
Yeah. I mean, there are like most this is the same in Valorant. There are tons of walls you can shoot through. That like if you have a gun with high enough bullet penetration, it'll just go right through and deal like 70% damage or something. So you could get killed through a wall super easily if you're not careful.
Yeah, like that's cool. Like I thought that's done really tastefully in Rainbow Six.
And I mean, it's really interesting, right? Like the fact that you could use like audio cues to then shoot someone through a wall is such a cool experience,
and such a totally different experience than the run and gun, you know, hip firing thing of Halo. It's like what I was saying.
I'm curious, the sound in Halo, how far away can you hear people? Because this is a huge thing in Valorant. You can hear people's footsteps from very far away. So like if you have good like if you're listening closely, what you want to be doing, even if someone everything you do makes a sound. If you switch your gun, other people can hear it. Like your enemies can hear that. If you reload, your enemies hear it. If you like take a single footstep and you're not walking, you can hear it from like probably like a third of the way across the map.
That's pretty far. Yeah. And especially in the older Halos, that is not a thing. Like you barely even hear your footsteps.
Right, because
like,
the game's like loud
Halo
in your
3.
face, right? Tons of shit's happening, so you're not really trying to hear that kind of stuff, right?
You hear the things that were really emphasized in the sound design for the multiplayer games of especially the older Halos was and I would argue in a way was better in this regard than the newer Halos was the grenades.
Okay.
So like in the older Halos, you didn't have hit markers, you didn't have like grenade indicators.
Right.
Your only indication that a nade was in, and nades are a big part of Halo because they can deplete shields and shit. So, the grenades were emphasized, and the gunfire. So you could hear guns for sure everywhere, right? Like significantly well. You could easily, from the other side of the map, you can tell that there's a guy's using the pistol.
Right.
Like, so the knowledge of the guns and of the grenades was super emphasized on the sound design front. In the latest Halo, like Halo 5, I think the sound design emphasized like they did a good job of being able to hear the effects. So like in Halo 5, they had like a bunch of different mechanics that you could do. Like you could do a thrust, you could do a ground pound, and I think they did a good job on tastefully diversifying those sounds so that you could understand exactly how a Spartan like around the corner was moving. Like if they used the thrust, you knew that, and that you knew their cooldown was just starting, so that was important information going into like the one-on-one battle that you were about to have around the corner. Like that guy can't thrust, you know. So anyway,
interesting. Like, so the way you use sound is very different, though. Like there's different priorities with how sound works in those games.
Very cool that these games the audio is like, of course it is, like of course they think about audio, but like I think a lot of times audio is something that's kind of glossed over when people are talking about games, the audio design. And yeah, these games do, it's so important in a shooter. Like I mean, regardless.
Yeah, and like in Valorant, like if the audio was bad and you couldn't identify where people were, it would be horrible, right? Like yeah, and that's the same with Siege, and Siege has actually released multiple patches like slowly adjusting how their audio works to make it easier and easier to like pinpoint where people are when you hear them.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of Koalatea clips that were basically cool because of picking up audio.
Yep.
So
does Halo have music? It does while you play, right?
Not during the multiplayer games.
Oh,
you
okay.
have a very slight, in like Halo 5, there's a very slight amount of like, I don't know, there's some overtone going into the game like as an intro, but not during the game.
Okay, I was just curious because Valorant has no sound either, except for after launch they added this like really fucking loud, like 3 times louder than anything else in the game sound when you win. That's like this like 5-second long like jingle. It's just like loud as fuck. It's so funny, and you just hear it every time you win.
Halo's got Jeff Stizer, you know, double kill, triple kill. So you gotta make room for Jeff. Like it's gotta be sweet.
Valorant just makes like these weird, loud, like orchestral hits when people get kills.
That's kind of cool.
And again, they get like higher pitched and more like harmonic every time. Like someone gets more and more kills. So you get an ace, and you kill their whole team. It's like really like loud and harmonic.
You know, talking Jeff Stizer, and like announcer, narrator for these games. Does Valorant? It sounds like Valorant doesn't have somebody saying things, or it's just sound cues.
There are things that are said after rounds end. Like there's someone that says like, I can't remember what they say. I think they do say some stuff, but it's not memorable.
So you know, we talked about how like when we were talking, maybe it was even in Art Styles or before.
Oh yeah, Rollick is right. Actually, at the end of the round, based on how the round ends, they will say different things. Like if you're like the last person on your team and you get the clutch, it'll be like clutch. And then if like if you do a save round, because you know like money economy is super important. If you guys like buy pistols and they all buy rifles, and you win the round, it'll be like thrifty. When you win. So there is some satisfying like announcer stuff, but never during the round.
So announcer stuff is something that I think first-person shooters should be more cognizant of in regards to monetization opportunities, man. So in Halo 5, they had Nathan Fillion, the voice of one of the campaign like Forerunner guys, and the voice of a grunt from Halo, like do all of the lines, and you could like purchase their voice packs instead.
So Dota has announcers in the game, and that's like a huge monetization structure in Dota. Is different announcers, right? There's like a Gabe Newell one. There's like a GLaDOS from Portal one. There's like and then like
Gabe.
What?
Did Gabe legit
Gabe Newell. There's like a bunch of them. Like every hero in the game, like tons of the different heroes have ones with their voice actors. There's like probably over 100 at this point announcer packs in Dota. So
yeah, I don't know why I haven't seen it in more
It's a
shooters.
good monetization opportunity for sure.
But anyway, sidetrack. Yeah, so sound design, big deal for sure. How are we doing on time? Do we need to leave the rest for next time?
Yeah, I think that was a good discussion. I think we'll have some good stuff to hear people about with their opinions on FPS design, and we can come up with some more FPS design topics for next week, and we'll do a big part 2.
Yeah, shit. We could do a million parts with this. I mean, with Halo Infinite coming out, I mean, it's some shit.
I'm probably gonna have to play that game so that we could do some episodes on it.
Well, it's coming out on PC
know,
too.
so I probably
day
will.
and date. So,
All
it's gonna
right.
be a fucking party.
Where can people find
All
us?
right. You can find us at our website, cablekoalaentertainment.com. There it has links to all our social media and, most importantly, Discord. Our Discord is not verified because Discord verification has not been working for a while now.
Rip.
So easiest way to find a link to our Discord is either through our website, clicking on the Discord link, or go to one of our social medias. You can find us at KOKoala_ENT. It's all one word, KOKoala_ENT. And we have links to our Discord in the bios or profile pages on those social media things. Check us out. Instagram, we do tons of sweet giveaways. We do giveaways in the Discord. If you join the Discord and get to level 6, you say? Level 6 of what? Level 6 in Agora, a very important entity in the universe of our upcoming game. So you can join the Discord, talk to us, hang out with the really cool community, many of which who are in the Twitch chat right now, and get a peek into
some
the
research
universe.
on some secret projects.
And actually, there's much more coming on that front. We just launched Milestones, right, Skylar?
Yes, which will be bringing out some more lore and some more universe information than we've had before. Some real shit.
KO Koala game is coming, guys. We actually are making a game.
Codename KO Koala game.
KO Koala game. Cock G.
Oh my god. Oof.
All right. Right on. Yeah, so that's where you can find us. You can harass Skylar about his opinions.
Or ask to play games with me, because I'll probably play any game with you.
That's right. I'm just kidding. Skylar would love to talk to you, love to chat with you, and you can follow us here on Twitch. Specifically, subscribe to us on YouTube. We are going to be posting some cool content, especially if you are a console kid. If you play consoles, PS4, Xbox, I'm going to be putting out a lot of content as these consoles get closer to launch. Specifically, is the PlayStation architecture that big of a deal, and was it going to enable 4 game developers? That's coming up soon, and we'll be doing giveaways. So,
by the way, next week we definitely got to talk about console versus PC FPS design.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
Especially, I'm not going to talk.
Yep, we'll save
next
it.
week.
Yeah, and actually, the Sony just announced they're doing a show on the 13th, I think.
11th.
Oh,
yes.
On the 11th, yeah, and then there's a PC gaming show this weekend as well. So I think there'll be a lot of new game news coming out soon.
Interesting. Yeah. We will have this piece of content surrounding the PlayStation 5, specifically focusing on the SSD and what it really enables soon before that 11th event.
Sweet.
For sure.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.
If you are listening, last thing I want to say, these VODs are up on YouTube. So if you prefer to watch your podcast, check us out on YouTube.
Perfect.
Until next time,
yes.
Check out the merch. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said it. We wore it. It's sick. It's actually legitimately comfortable.
I've worn this. I wear the shirt so much. It's quarantine. I might not wash it as much as I should, but it's like one of the most comfortable shirts I own. Honestly, I love how it feels.
The Tri-Blend shirt is super.
Get the Tri-Blend shirt for sure. The other ones are good, but this shirt is like an amazing shirt.
Yeah, the Tri-Blend is really good. And pay attention because we have new designs coming out, and so we'll be rotating things out. And they'll be back. They'll still be available, but we'll be rotating things out and be rotating some new hotness in. So if you
exclusive
like
paid DLC shirts,
bang. Very good. All right, guys.
All right. Goodbye.
All right.